Brian Aho here, Coach Kraus, and man, are we glad to have this guy back. We got Bert Lehman in the house. We're worried about you, right? I mean, football's not real stressful for us Vikings fans because we just kind of know how it's going to work out and we accept it. It is what it is. Packers got your hopes up a little bit. Probably should have won, and they kind of pulled the Vikings with interception, missed field goal, all kinds of stuff. You okay? Just checking.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Right?
I'm fine. I mean, it's weird because it was the other week, where I said that the Packers were just playing with house money, and then Kraus said, "Well, they've come this far. You got to go for it." And yeah, during that game, there was a part of me that was thinking, yeah, next week in Detroit, we can take care of the Lions, but then it all just kind of fell apart.
It just fizzled away. Well, I tell you what, before we get into episode number 209, a little shout out, Impact Health Sharing. So it's a great alternative to the rising cost of health insurance. If you pay for your own health insurance out there, business owner, if you have employees that you cover, self-employed, whatever it may be, and you look at it and you're like, man, I'm paying way too much for health insurance. I basically can't go to the doctor I want to go to. If you just got nothing but headaches, hit me up, 218-969-1380. I can get you a quick, no obligation quote, get you some information to see if this can maybe help you keep money in your pocket and have a better experience with the healthcare industry. So, a little disclaimer here, boys. So we're just three knuckleheads here with a platform, like to talk racing, like to talk a little shit, just kind of what we do. So if your feelings get hurt, really easy. If you're soft, if you're fragile, if you're kind of that new generation that doesn't know how to kind of take a little shit, this might offend you a little bit, and we're just going to go ahead and say we're not sorry. It just is what it is, all right? So our opinions don't always match up with our sponsors. Most of the time they do. And the fact of the matter is we like to have a hell of a lot of fun. We got a great sport. We're going to talk about some racing, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the fact is we swear a little bit on this show. So if you know that and your kids are around, they're probably at the racetrack and hear it anyway. If you have a race car, they're probably in the shop and hear it anyway. Probably not going to say anything they haven't heard. So let's get to it. I guess Wissota South, right? We can kind of call it Wissota South. The Ernie Mincy early thaw down at the Central Arizona Raceway in Casa Grande, Arizona. Kraus, I mean, you know a lot of these guys. I mean, would you say, is it fair to say this has become the new winter destination for Wissota racers?
Yeah, absolutely, especially after the Wild Wild West. I call it the Wild Wild West. I know it's just the Wild West. But after that moved, that's kind of where everybody was going with their mods and their X mods or B mods or whatever they were calling them. And now, obviously, with I-94 Raceway and Don Shaw and the boys hopping on board down there, Ron Krogh down there, Chris Steppen down there. I mean, it's basically you turn on the can't remember. I was watching somebody and somebody goes, "Is that Ron Krogh?" And then the next class came on and someone goes to me, "Is that Chris Steppen?" I said, "Yeah, it is." So it definitely is, and kind of gets you a little energized up in Wissota country here, especially with how cold it is and sitting in hockey rinks all winter long and not at racetracks. But yeah, it's definitely turned into the Wissota deal. And I mean, the few main class stuff, especially late models, it's all Wissota guys down there. So it's fun to watch. It's obviously we know a lot of those guys and know what they're capable of, but it's definitely a fun event to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get into a little results here. Just a little quick recap. I know, Bert, you didn't get a chance to watch. You watched the World of Outlaws. You were all hung up on football, probably a little bit in depression mode, maybe a couple adult beverages deep. I'm not really sure. We know where your focus was. I get it. But before we do, a quick shout out to our friend Brad Parson Soil and Egg Solution. If you're in primarily northwestern Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, if you're in farming, right, what are you looking to do in 2024? You're looking to be more profitable. Better yields equals more money in your pocket. Well, Brad's got a lot of data, and they've done it, right? He's not just started this program. He's been doing this for a number of years. Give Brad a call, 320-219-3542, and find out how Brad Parsons Soil and Egg Solutions can help your farming program be more successful in 2024. So a little recap here. Late models, we'll start with that, okay? So the late models, Bert, is very much like the Dirt Kings kind of tri-state concept, right? They had Wissota late models. There were some guys with 525 crates. They had full-out open late models that they restricted down, and they could all run together. That was kind of the concept down there. Night number one, all around the board, in my opinion, was by far the best racing of the weekend. Track had a little character, a little more moisture, kind of went away the next couple nights. Wasn't terrible, but night one was significantly better. And the ageless wonder himself, Mr. Smooth, probably my buddy Chonga would say the best late model driver of all time. He parked it in Victory Lane. Kind of the story that night, though, Ricky Weiss, who struggled, kind of had an incident in the heat race. He went 21st to 2nd. That's a really, really good run. Dustin Strand, he was pretty sporty. He was up on the podium as well. But kind of the story there was the first and second place driver literally yard sailed it right off the top of the racetrack. And there was a number of drivers that did that. So they weren't the only ones, but Bryson James from out west, he actually kind of put a move on Tyler Peterson to take the lead, and TPO held him off, and in the very next lap, Bryson James dumped it right off the end of the racetrack, his night effectively over. A little bit later in the race, Tyler Peterson, I'm not sure what happened. I don't know if he got in a tire, if he got pinched and maybe something rolled under. I think it sounded like something was dragging, or if he just overdrove it. I'm not sure. Doesn't happen often, but Bert, he gave one away, drove right off the end of the racetrack in turn one leading, and that was kind of a painful one for him. Night number two in the late models, he went back to back. Billy Moyer getting it done. Weiss with another move forward, plus 11. Austin Cool, which is a family that races down there from Cave Creek, Arizona, with a nice run. He got third. I'm going to talk a little bit about Dustin Bloom, but I'll hold that off for just a second here. Night number three, Peterson went from zero to hero, so to speak, kind of dominated night number three, put it in Victory Lane. Billy Moyer and Ricky Weiss continuing their great runs down there, finishing second and third. Now, a guy that stuck out to me that didn't hit the podium, but he was pretty quick, Kraus, was Clayton Stuckey. Now, if you've been around dirt late model racing for a while, his dad is Ronnie Stuckey. I believe that's Black Diamond, right? I think he's affiliated with or owns or whatever Black Diamond. He went plus 17 and plus 12 to get a couple fourth place finishes. Look for him to be pretty sporty here this coming weekend. Dustin Strand on the podium, ended up getting spun out one night. Guys, I got to give a donkey award from down south. So the Strand camp went and talked to the race director down there. That would be Mr. Chris Steppen himself, and said, are we doing a no-fault caution? We making judgment calls? What we doing? And he says, oh, no fault here. We're going to make a decision. We're going to make a call. Well, Cole Schill spun out Dustin Strand, and Stevie Wonder texted me and say, hey, did you see that? Well, evidently they didn't see that in the booth. And well, the Strand camp went over to talk to Steppen and say, I thought we weren't doing judgment calls. He did. He goes, we weren't. I called it on Dustin. He's like, well, that's kind of interesting. He goes, well, I can do whatever I want. It sounded like it was a pretty heated debate there. So I got to give old Donkey award for Mr. Personality himself on the way he treats his race car drivers. Now, mod racing, Bert, IMCA guy here, I believe, was Chaz Baca the 2023 IMCA national champion? I believe he was, wasn't he?
I'm not sure.
Bert, you're a freaking IMCA guy, and he's Bert.
I don't keep track of the national champs.
I think he was. He ended up getting a first, second, and a first. I mean, he was kind of the car to beat. Tom Berry Jr., though, he won night two, got second on night three. Night number one, he was another victim, drove right off the end of the racetrack. The B mods, so Kraus, you mentioned that the late models is primarily with soda cars down there. The B mods, essentially the limited mods, was a class designed specifically for them because they already have IMCA sport mods down there. And last year they tried to run them all together. And from what I understand, none of the IMCA sport mods were willing to even show up, even the locals, because they felt it wasn't fair. So this year they did basically two B mod classes. The Nightmare Lucas Rodin, dominant. 3 for 3 down there in the desert. Jake Smith, also really good. A second, a third, and a fourth. So he was right there A guy that I'm really, really interested in watching here over the next weekend, though, third generation racer from Wisconsin, young gun Blake Adams, just turned 15 here a week ago. He got a pair of seconds on night 2 and on night 3, but night number 1, he's running second. Literally, Bert, the first lap, you could see the car kind of hike up, right? And he had tire smoke off the left rear immediately. I don't know if he got hit, the body got into it, or something was out of adjustment. Not sure what happened there, but it nipped him at the very end of the race, and he ended up getting a left rear flat in the closing laps. Otherwise, he would have been on the podium all 3 nights. Really fun to watch. So let's get into the good, the bad, and the ugly of the Ernie Mincy early thaw. So, Kraus, this is going to be you and I. Coach Kraus, Bert is kind of a spectator here because he didn't get to watch it.
Well, I do have one tidbit about Austin Cool that you had mentioned before.
Okay.
I've interviewed him before because he's raced up at 141 Speedway for the Clash at the Creek, but his dad is originally from Wisconsin, so he has Wisconsin ties. But yeah, they live down in Arizona, and because of the Wisconsin ties, I don't know if he always races with this helmet, but he has a helmet decked out with Green Bay Packers decals. So
which is okay. Not nearly as cool as Blake Adams' helmet, which is proudly supporting the purple and gold. So he's kind of a glutton for punishment. So interesting, kind of little rivalry in the helmet.
And then Austin's sister is Taylor Cool, who races an IMCA Sport Mod.
Yeah, she ran pretty good down there as well. Somebody keeps calling me there, which I have it on Do Not Disturb. I got it to work, but evidently if they call multiple times, the phone rings. Not true that is. So let's start with a good. Any specific shout-outs, Kraus? Anything that you're like, man, this was a really good deal down there? Anything that you want to give a shout-out to?
No, I think adding the limited mods. You know, I'll get into the bad part about having 2 B mod classes later, but you know, having the limited mods down there and seeing how good of a show they're putting on, especially when, you know, I was looking at the top, I think the top 6 in points technically right now are all Northern cars, are all WISSOTA cars. You know, and then getting guys, you know, I'm not sure if it looks like Jordan Hinkemeyer. I didn't know if he's going to be running that full time or if he's in a B mod or he has both. Who knows? I don't know what's going on down there. And then are you aware who Onyx Johnson is?
I am, yeah.
That's Zach Johnson's son. Yeah, the millennial farmer's son. So he's racing down there, getting some wheel time. I got to know he's a hockey player, so I got to know him real well. So I coached him when he was younger and stuff like that. So, you know, just seeing that class down there, I think, and giving some people, you know, chances to race. Ryan McCleary's down there. He's a full-time Viking Speedway guy that's down there racing as well. So getting some wheel time in. And, you know, the normal other guys. And, you know, Jake Smith, Blake Adams, Lucas Rodin, throw Travis Sauer in the bunch. That's 4 really, really, really good Midwest modified down there. So I've liked that class. I think that's been good, and they put on a good show. They're racing hard, so it's good to see that class down there.
Yeah, Rodin kind of stunk it up a little bit there. I mean, if he would just go ahead and pull off, it'd be a hell of a battle for the win.
I do have one shout out. Even though I didn't watch it, I know, well, last week I had said that Tom Barry Jr. was racing Mike Wiedelstadt's car, and Tony Wiedelstadt was racing Mike Wiedelstadt's wife's car down there. Tony Wiedelstadt would be Mike's son, and Tony Wiedelstadt qualified for all 3 modified features, and he had at least 1 top 10 finish. So a shout out to him. I don't think he's going to be back down there this following weekend. I think that was just a 1 weekend thing.
Okay, and they had 33 cars, so it wasn't like a gimme to get in the show. They had to qualify to get in.
Right.
You know, the car count was a little lighter in the sport mod and the limited mods because it relied solely on one group of race cars. I'm going to go with, Lucas Rodin, dominant. I mean, 3 for 3. It don't get any better than that. And the first night car looked a little snug, but it looks like they maybe changed a little something because it really got through the middle of the corner better and better as the week went on. Blake Adams, highly impressive. He's going to be super fun to watch in 2024. Keep an eye on that kid. And I got to give a shout out to an old 71A pit guy, Dustin Bloom. So when I went down to central Minnesota, raced in like Wilmer and stuff like that, for a few years, he'd kind of sneak on over and help me in the pits because a lot of times I was solo at those midweek shows. Guys, he ran pretty well. He got a fifth, and a ninth down there. And quite honestly, he should have got second the one night, ran out of fuel. Started sputtering with like 2 or 3 to go, and it shut right off coming out of 4. And he went from second to fifth like that. But Dustin Bloom looking pretty sporty down there. He's not afraid to get on the pump, so kind of fun to watch. So now let's get into the bad. Coach Krause, the bad. What do you got?
I'm going with the officiating. I mean, I know I texted you that one. I can't remember what it was, but guys were just getting punted. And that, I think, was a Strand involved in when everybody got their spot back. I think someone went off, but you know, the calls down there, I get it. It's a judgment call, but you got these guys traveling. They're going all the way across the countryside. Last thing you want to do is, you know, and I don't know if they have a flagman. I don't know if they have spotters. I don't know what they have down there, but just something you need to clean up a little bit, just to make sure you're making, you know, getting the right calls down there. And, you know, like I said, people traveling clear across the country a race, you go down there and get a bad call, and all of a sudden you can ruin your whole. I know I wouldn't be happy, but they just clean that thing up a little bit. So it's just something that I thought they needed a little work.
A hockey coach would typically handle that pretty well.
Well, after the shenanigans I had. Well, I lost my 11-game win streak on Saturday because of officiating, so I'm not real happy about it. So hopefully none of the NA3HL officials watch the One to Go show. I'll end up getting fined. I'm just here so I won't get fined kind of deal. But yeah, it was a little bit of a gong show, so I'm not real happy with officials right now.
Gotta love the 3 blind mice. So I'm just going to go with somebody that underperformed and had absolutely no luck at all. Multi-time Wissota late model national champion Chad Becker. DN did not qualify 2 of the nights, did not finish the middle night, and I don't know all the details to what happened. I mean, literally, if it could go wrong, it did go wrong for Chad Becker. I'm looking for him to rebound here this weekend. I mean, he's a hell of a race car driver, and the drier it gets, he's usually pretty darn sporty. So looking for a little bit more out of Becker if he's going to be down there this coming weekend. Now for the ugly. Anything that sticks out that you're like, what the hell? All right, anything that's ugly. What do you got?
Multiple BMOD classes. I don't know if that's bad, ugly, or whatever it is, but I mean, I get why. I've been watching the lap times, and I know I text you, Ryan. Other than Lucas Rodin that first night in the heat, he was about half a second, but he was a half second faster than everybody. The lap times have been pretty similar. I think you could have thrown those classes together. There's no doubt about it, especially the way it has been. So that's just one with me. But you know, shout out. I think the track has been pretty good down there. The heats have been sketchy. There's no doubt about it. But they're running during the day. The temperatures. I don't know I don't know how hot or anything like that is. But you know what? For the most part, the features had a couple lanes. There's been guys ripping the top. There's been guys down on the bottom. The middles had some character. There's been guys passing. There's been guys. You got to look at the results. If there's people going to the front, you got a good racetrack. And I don't care what it is. It may have taken down a little bit of rubber there on Saturday, late maybe in that race. With the late models, but I think the racing's been pretty good there. And when you see guys going plus 21, plus 17, you got a little character in that track and making it passing. And the other thing, guys, it seems like right after restart, Ryan, I don't know if guys are misjudging corner number 1, but it seems like a lot of the guys going off corner number 1 has been after restarts. Right. So I don't know if they're I'm sure a lot of it has to do with not being just different track. You haven't been there. You don't know the conditions. You go roasting into turn 1, and all of a sudden you're out in the cactuses out there. So, but overall, I just got to give a shout out to. I think the track's been pretty racy.
Yeah, my dad said that he's been down there. I think he went 2 of the 3 nights, and on film they kind of show a lot of the leader and all that, but there's racing throughout, and you don't really see that watching online. But he said there was some pretty good racing throughout the field down there. And kind of reminded me, and I don't know if it transitions the same way, maybe Tyler Peterson could let us know, but in turn, Aberdeen was always a track that you said cars that don't race there all the time, literally just drive right off the end of the racetrack. Kind of had a weird transition. Kind of wonder if maybe that's the deal here. I'm not sure. I'm going to go with the ugly. Not going to go to the limited B mods, sport mods. I'm going to go to the modifieds, and not necessarily anything that they're doing at the show, but when you look at it, right, we got a hell of a good group of limited mods, B mods down there, great group of late models, but there's no WISSOTA mods down there. Why? Because IMCA mods and WISSOTA mods are so much different that there's just not a race for them. So I wish, if I had a wish for the racing world, it would be take the modifieds and make IMCA, WISSOTA, USRA, USMTS, make them figure out a 3 to 5 year plan to get on the same page and just make a modified. That would make this event so much better. The modified racing was good between Baca and TBJ, but it'd be super fun seeing some of our mod guys down there competing, and now they really have no place to go. So 2024 underway for the World of Outlaw late models. The Sunshine Nationals down at Volusia. Before we get into that, quick shout out, Fastlane Motorsports and Powder Coating of Ashland, Wisconsin, home of the Galloper chassis, proud sponsor of the #1 series in all WISSOTA dirt racing, the Fastlane Superstock series, custom powder coating, fabricating, sandblasting. They can work on anything. They get parts, they service tracks, they do a hell of a job. Great people up in Ashland, Wisconsin. Fastlane Motorsports and Powder Coating. So a quick recap. Night number 1, Mother Nature got it done. Night number 2, the old mailman himself. We're going to talk more about this race in just a second here. But Devin Moran made it 3 in a row because he won both nights last year of the Sunshine Nationals, won this year opening night, so made it 3 in a row. Sheppy got second, RTJ third. We're going to talk more about this race in a second. Kind of funny that they Ruben is pretty animated when he does the driver's intros. And a little, I'm not sure if you guys know this, the nickname for Devin Moran is the mailman. His family don't like that nickname. Do you guys know why he's called the mailman?
Yeah, I think I heard this story.
Kraus, do you know?
Yeah, I do. You told me last year, but you can say it again.
Yeah, I'm guessing. I don't know this for sure. I'm speculating here. Probably an adult beverage or two involved. But it sounds like when he was a little younger, he kind of yard saled a whole lot of mailboxes. So they call him the mailman. So I don't know. Mom and Dad probably weren't too excited about that. But he's pretty quick down there at Volusia. Night number 3, which would have been night number 2 of racing, the old Rocket 1 parking it in Victory Lane. Bronson and Moran finishing out the top 3. So a couple tidbits here, right? 22 cars. So, Bert, you actually passed this along to us. 22 cars have signed up for the World of Outlaws for their loyalty program. Prior to the first night of World of Outlaw racing, teams could pay a $2,500 loyalty deposit, and that would lock them in. Like, we're committed to following the series. If they don't, they're just out $2,500. But by signing up, they're in line for provisionals. They get a bonus structure. Bert, your thoughts on that? And Coach Krause, we talked about that before the show. What do you think of this loyalty program?
I'm not opposed to the loyalty program, other than they also get points for signing up for this loyalty program. And is it 500 points they get?
Coach, you actually looked. It said 500 in the article. But then you looked at my race pass and it looked like maybe 300. But either way,
they got 300 show up points for Volusia. So I don't know if it's spread out for different amounts throughout the year.
I mean, by doing that, I mean I don't know. I like points to be earned on the track, not just because you sign up for something. I mean, maybe if you want to give them 25 points or something like that, but I mean 300, 500, whatever it is, I mean that's a lot of points just for signing up to be part of the series.
Essentially what it does, right, is they know from day one that these are the drivers that are committed to following the series. Now the good part to that, right, is they can do promotional stuff, marketing, they can kind of get everything laid out, like they can do video clips and they can kind of promote because they know who the drivers are going to be. The bad part is it's not till like mid-March when World of Outlaws and Lucas run head-to-head. So who knows if a guy goes to Volusia and wins 4 of them, right? With Devin Moran, right? He could win that one. He could go win 2 more at the end of the Speed Week swing, but he's definitely not going to run it. Now, kind of sounds like a lot of these guys know, like, hey, we're going to race Lucas. They kind of have their plan in place. So I guess there's no surprises, which in the past, there's always been that 1 or 2 that is like, you know what? We are going to follow the series because we've been running good, but it is what it is. Coach Bert.
Well, and I mean, this was stated in the article that I had read, so I can't take credit for this, but, Devin Moran won a feature, had a good finish in the other feature. You would expect him to be leading points, and he's not because of this loyalty program points.
Yeah, which I guess at the end of the day, it makes it less complicated because there's no wondering who's going to be where. So, yeah, it's an interesting deal. Coach Kraus, any thoughts on that?
No, I really don't. I don't. I need to figure out why they're doing it. You know what I mean? I don't. I was just kind of thinking of, provisionals and, maybe, do guys signing up, say Jimmy Owens has signed up for it, does he jump ship and go to Lucas? Now, if he comes back to World Outlaws, say in July, does he get a provisional for that show, or can he use an emergency provisional? I don't, if it's something like that, I pay $2,500 and I run Lucas and I decide I'm going to go run a World Outlaw show, because a lot of those guys don't, because they don't get a provisional. Say something happens, they want those provisionals, especially early in the year. It makes sense to, there's a lot of emergency provisionals and used at Volusia already, and regular provisionals. So I don't know. It's an interesting deal. My big thing is that it's, especially for smaller tracks, who's coming. Like you said, you can promote these drivers. You can help them out. You can get their sponsors out there. And, hey, they're coming to I-94 Speedway, or they're going to Norman County Speedway. Here's who's coming. You know what I mean? I think that's a cool deal. You can really, boost the drivers and really help out their sponsors in the series.
Yeah, it'd be fun. It'd be fun to maybe ask Brent Larson or Dustin Sorensen their thoughts, reasoning behind it. I'm guessing the drivers don't have an issue. I mean, heck, 22 of them signed up, so that's a pretty big group of cars, so they must not be too upset about it. The other drivers are looking at it like, hey, we're running Lucas. It is what it is. So the good, the bad, and the ugly from Volusia to the Sunshine Nationals. So, Bert, let's go ahead and start with you. What sticks out? The good. What was something that was like really good at Volusia?
Well, you kind of mentioned it already, that first feature race that they had. I mean, that was definitely a whale of a race, and Devin Moran, I don't know what it is about Volusia, but he loves that track. He does very, very well there. So, I mean, he was definitely in the good, as was RTJ. He was running up near the front both nights, and I would put Bishop under the good too. I mean, he was passing cars, and he didn't get a win, but I mean, he had good finishes and he was passing cars. So, that's important for him to get the year started off passing cars at least.
Yeah, can't qualify worth a crap, but he was sporty in the feature. Coach Kraus, the good.
I think the main good was just getting the show in. And having a somewhat of a racy racetrack. It was wet, and watching those heats on Friday, it was like, oh boy, this may not be very good at all. And they finally got that cushion blown off there a little bit, and that was an unbelievable feature on that first one is what it was, with everybody doing what they were doing, flying around the track. And those guys race. I mean, I don't care what the track conditions are. Those guys are going to race. They're going to drive through the rough, through the slick, off each other, in the marbles. They're going to do whatever it takes to win. So I think the good was just A, getting the races in, and then B, having a decent surface to race on.
And the thing is, if I'm going to go back to that race too. I mean, that race number 1, I think we should start a category, right? And put that on the list of potential race of the year candidates right out of the gate. I mean, if I told you guys beforehand, I said, okay, RTJ and Bobby Pierce are both going to lead and neither one of them are going to win the race, you'd be like, yeah, bullshit, right? Like that little kid. That wouldn't happen. Like, nobody would guess that. Ethan Dotson, Bobby Pierce start front row. Dotson gets the lead. Pierce gets by him in lap traffic. RTJ on a yellow drives by both of them. Moran slides into the mix, gets in there, and here comes Sheffy from 16th to 2nd and might have won that race, but Bronson crossed it up when he was trying to lap him, and he ended up having to really get out of the gas, and it killed all the momentum that Shepard had, but it was unbelievable. That's on Dirt Vision. If you haven't seen it, it's worth checking that race out. It was really good. So, the bad. Bert, anything stick out? Anything that you're like, that's the bad?
This was a World of Outlaw show, right?
Yep.
You wouldn't necessarily know that from the top finishers in the features because the Lucas drivers kind of populated the top spots more than the World of Outlaw drivers did. So, but I do love it when drivers from both series race together because that makes it more fun to watch. But I don't know if this is necessarily the bad, but Bobby Pierce getting passed. You don't see that after what he did at the Wild West shootout. And, he didn't just get passed by one or two cars. I mean, he got passed by quite a few cars. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. Yeah,
he struggled a little bit. Kraus, the bad.
Going with my buddy, my co-host Dan, and his favorite part of racing, lap cars. Kyle Bronson, he wrecked that race. He completely wrecked that race. You're not part of the race. Like my buddy Dan says, you're not part of the race. Get out of the race. Okay? So shut her down. Get out of the way. I don't know what he was doing. I mean, if he was trying to maybe make himself feel good that he was battling with the leaders getting lapped, I don't know what it was. But and the track's narrow. I get it. But you got to get out of the way. You see the first leader. Jimmy Owens did a great job. I mean, I think he got lapped and he kind of pulled up to the heights. It's hard to do. I get that. But, get out of the way. Let it finish, especially at the end of the race. Get out of the way. It's different if you're 100-lap race and your battle is trying to stay on the lead lap. But end of the race, get the heck out of the way.
Yeah, lappers race. And that's the problem with 872 provisionals, too. I mean, and I get it. You got to have provisionals or some of these drivers won't follow the series. I don't know if Bronson got one night one or not, but, when you have that many cars in a feature, lap traffic plays a bigger toll. Now, there is the flip side of that, right? The flip side of that is the drivers that are really good at navigating traffic that can, really kind of anticipate things are going to be at an advantage. So, like Bobby Pierce, when he got by Ethan Dotson for the lead, right? He was really good through lap traffic. So kind of give and take, but I 100% get it. No fault caution strikes again, right? Dennis Erb Jr. had kind of a rough year last year. Night number one, he gets dumped by Garrett Smith in the heat race. Literally lap number one, he qualified well. He's inside pole in the heat. First corner, Garrett Smith turns him around. And then, boy, I tell you what, man, Garrett Smith maybe right his mouth, maybe writing checks his ass probably can't cash, right? Like literally after the race, kind of talking smack, like, he knew he screwed up. I mean, like literally just absolutely smack talking Dennis Erb Jr. after the race. It's like, dude, like you got like one podium in your life and it ended up being a 1-lane race at the Dirt Track World Championship. Let's relax a little bit here with the talking smack. Not real professional on his part. No fault sucks. I mean, it is what it is. Ruben was even super apologetic. He's like explaining it to the crowd, just to let everybody know we don't make calls here. Like you can tell that I think he's probably heard a lot about it from different people. So he was making sure people knew. And then we got our first parade lap tire of the year. Cody Overton. Come on, man. I mean, what? Like left front flat tire. I think that was night number 2. Literally fell off on the parade lap. It's like this happens more and more every year. And I can promise you this. My tires weren't falling off when Chongo was there because he checked them not once, not twice, not 3 times, probably 4 or 5 times. They were not falling off the cars. I just don't get this. Kraus, have you ever had a tire fall off on a parade lap ever?
Nope, but it's those new pit lifts, man. The cars just sit up. You come in, put your car up on the pit lift, and take tires off. And if you don't have a pit guy or something going on, like my car rarely ever leaves the ground. I get it, but I don't have the money to buy one, and my car just stays on the ground. So I know there's tires on my car when I'm going out, but tires falling off at the parade laps at the Wissota 100. I mean, tires falling off all over the place. So better have a pit guy. And the guys get in a hurry, and I get you got 10-minute horns, and you got to hurry up and do this. But he's got to be a little bit smarter at that, because one of these days somebody's going to wreck something big time.
Go ahead, Bert.
Well, that was my job when I was on a pit crew. My job was make sure the tires were tight. So I know the feeling that your pit crew guy is like, yeah, I better check them again just to double check.
Well, and saying the pit lift is the reason tires fall off is like saying guns shoot people, right? Guns kill people. They use that excuse. Oh man, it was on the lift. I completely forgot. No, you're a dumbass. That's what happened, right? We both raced against somebody that maybe not just had one fall off. He had two fall off. I don't want to mention any names, but Dave Moss. So let's go with the ugly. Bert, anything that stuck out, you're like, the ugly.
Nothing stuck out. Nothing stuck out to me. I just watched the feature, so I'm not sure if anything happened during the heat races.
Coach Kraus?
RTJ running out of tear-offs. It's pretty ugly. Probably cost him a feature. I mean, I get it. I don't. I've never done it. I've never ran out of tear-offs, but with the stacks, I mean, with the laminated deals, you can put a good 30 tear-offs on there and get some duct tape and use your hand driving around half the time when it's all muddy. And I don't. Did you guys see the pictures of his helmet? I mean, you literally couldn't see out of it. And I couldn't imagine driving on that track. So he's got to make sure that's a donkey, ugly, whatever one award there, not putting up tear-offs on and costing yourself a feature.
That's also Bert's old job right there. So you needed Bert Lehman. Bert Lehman is for hire. Drivers, right? Bert Lehman, look him up on Facebook. Your tires ain't going to fall off. You're not going to run out of tear-offs. He's for hire. I've ran out of tear-offs in the past, back in the day in Superior, when they had just the regular Ultra Shield ones, the ones that, like, if you put more than 7 or 8, you could not see out of them. But with these laminated ones, like you said, you can put, I think, as many as 35 on there, and you can have the extended tabs. I wonder if he pulled off a bunch at one time. I've seen that happen as well, but yeah, that was a bummer. The ugly for me, fan question coming from Chris here. He goes, super late model racing, right? Dirt late model racing is becoming the IROC series of dirt. It's like 872 Longhorn chassis, a couple, right? Team Zero, a couple Rockets. Is Hudson O'Neal the only hope to prevent it from being pure dominance by Longhorns in 2024?
Well, I mean, he has to do a lot of winning because, I mean, whatever chassis is doing a lot of winning, that's the chassis that drivers tend to go to. So if he wins a lot, he can help turn the tide. I mean, you've seen some drivers, though, switching away from Longhorn. I mean, you hear people saying that, because there's so many Longhorn drivers that, not all the drivers get the attention that other drivers get. So, I mean, I think there probably does come a point when there's too many drivers with one chassis. I mean, it's hard to help everybody out. So, but I mean, as long as Hudson wins a lot, he may get some. That's the only chance of getting more Rocket drivers.
With that said, hats off to Steve Arpin, right? I mean, he's got charisma. He's got that it factor. He's got that personality where this is marketing, right? Because everybody looks at it and they're like, Hudson O'Neal's fast. There's nothing that makes a Longhorn like super special compared to any other car. But Steve Arpin they're doing a good job there with marketing. And I really believe that's the whole key. I mean, not that affordable chassis in the super stock's a bad car. They build a good race car. But back in the 90s, they dominated everywhere because they did great marketing. Like, they gave a free chassis to like everybody and their brother at every fast racetrack. So everybody that had an affordable was winning. Well, Longhorn, there's going to be people looking going, Longhorn's dominating everything. Well, yeah, there's 90% Longhorns and 5% Rockets and 2% Team Zero and a Capital out there. Of course, they got way more cars, but great job of marketing by Arpin, and he's doing good things down there in North Carolina. Another fan question, we got a couple here from Brent. One of them, I'm not really sure what he means, so we might skip that one, but you remember that Bill Fry deal back in the day, right? Remember he got taken out by Bloomquist at the World, And turned out, I think he had a 4-wheel drive race car, right? So he was innovative. He was winning races. He was really kind of stepping up the game. And it sounds like Jack Boggs took him out at the USA Nationals as well. And Brent says, when these drivers, right, top tier drivers are literally like, hey, I'm going to take them out. And that's a judgment deal if they did it on purpose or whatever happened there. But in his mind, they blatantly took out Bill Fry to make sure he couldn't win. Okay. Now he's like, imagine what they do behind the scenes. You know, if they're willing to do that on the racetrack, just flat out wreck somebody, what else are they willing to do? And we know that maybe a couple of them drivers are a little shady, right? Coach Kraus, Bert, any stories that you've witnessed in your years of racing on the local level where drivers, crews, whatever, may have done something to sabotage a competitor, whether it be at the track, in the shop, something like that? Have you guys come across any of that in your years of racing?
I do not have any stories off the top of my head regarding that.
Coach Kraus?
Unfortunately, you do. We had we had a Hornet short tracker issue around the area. Some people's claiming somebody did something to their car when they were away or at a pit meeting. You hear stuff like that, and still to this day, we were talking about the loose wheels, Ryan. I've had one loose wheel in my career, and I don't know. My crew still thinks somebody loosened it. There was a red flag, and I was starting on the pole and leading the race, and I ended up getting a loose wheel. And there's been some saying that I was in Madison at the time. This was bad. Oh boy, I can't even remember. This was 2003, 4. And I got a loose wheel, and someone said the ambulance guy had got out, and we all left to go up. There's a red flag. I went over by the wall. Someone said there was an ambulance guy back by my car doing something. So then I ended up getting a loose left rear wheel. So who knows? You can't prove that stuff, but unfortunately, there are some people out there that are going to want to mess with you, and if you're winning enough, and they're going to try to do something to you. So yeah, a couple stories, but you hear them here and there, but it's few and far between. But it's an unfortunate thing that we even have to talk about that.
Well, I just thought it's not a story specific to this situation, sabotaging somebody else, but I heard it. I don't know if the story's true, but I heard a story that, because in the IMCA modified class, you used to be able to claim engines. So a driver got claimed, and while he was taking the engine out, the story I heard was that he dropped bolts down into the engine while he was taking it out, and it was shortly after that this driver was racing a late model. So
I got another one on claims. So back in the day, there were some drivers that were dominant modifieds that got claimed pretty often. And maybe our buddy Nick Hoff, who listens to the show Hard Charger Race Engines, maybe he can kind of elaborate how this works. But on the balancing of engines, I believe they were balancing like externally through the dampener, flex plate, whatever it may be. And what they were doing is most people were their stuff was more balanced, and they didn't give the flex plate or whatever it was, flywheel maybe. They didn't give certain parts with the engine. So literally people were buying these engines, in the claim, and they were grenading right afterwards because they weren't balanced properly. So that was a thing. And then something probably a little bit from your area, a little rumor mill going around, our buddy Jesse Klug, right? So he actually, a hell of a good late model driver for a number of years, switched over to race asphalt. Actually, primary sponsor was the former executive director for Wasota, Rod Lindquist. And this is all rumors. I heard this is Jesse's side of the story, of course, that his crew chief, right? And Coach Kraus might know his name, but the crew chief went on to sabotage them and was supposedly doing things to make the car brake, monkeying with the brakes, doing different things to make Jesse crash and not perform well. And it was shortly thereafter that the crew chief became the driver of that race car. So, Coach Kraus, I'm pretty sure you've heard about that story a time or two. And we get old New Dan Dan, if you want to go ahead and comment in the comments below, feel free, because I know you're not scared. Coach Krause, you've heard that story, haven't you?
Oh yeah, a few times. Grew up with Jesse. Obviously, lives right down the road from me, and lives right. Actually, built his place right, basically almost touching my parents' property out there. So I know Jesse real well, and definitely heard that story.
So a look ahead this week's events, but before we do, right here, look ahead to this. Right, XL1 engine treatment. Okay. XL1 engine treatment brought to you by Daytona 1 Performance Lubricants. So Daytona 1 founder, Buck, actually is a member. He's actually in the NASA Hall of Fame for lubricants. So when it comes to lubricants, this guy way smarter than this guy. I can promise you that. But this particular product is just one of many they have. Okay, and they call this horsepower in a bottle on the dyno. Increases torque and horsepower, reduces engine noise for your street vehicles, helps with cold weather startups, fuel mileage because of less drag, superior protection for your engine. If you want to learn more about this great product and all the other products Daytona 1 Performance Lubricants has, including the great tire treatment products they have, give Chad a call, 507-828-3536. That's Daytona 1 Performance Lubricants. So this week, guys, we got kind of three big events, right? Week 2 of the Ernie Mincy Early Thaw down at Casa Grande, Arizona. They're going to race Thursday, Friday, Saturday. That's on Speed Sport, Dirt Race Central if you're up in Wissota country. Thursday, Friday, Saturday as well. The Lucas Oil Dirt Late Model Series getting underway. Golden Isle Speedway in Brunswick, Georgia. And then if you're a modified fan, Dirt Race Central is going to have all the action. UMP Modifieds at Lake City, Florida. So be sure to check those out. Guys, what are you guys looking forward to? Out of these three events this weekend, right? Are you looking forward to the modifieds at Lake City? Are you looking forward to, I think it's North Florida Speedway is what it is. Are you looking forward to the late models at Brunswick, or are you looking forward to seeing more of the Wissota guys compete down in Arizona? Bert, what are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to the start of the Lucas Oil season, and I'm curious to see what kind of chip on the shoulder RTJ has entering this season based on, him not winning the championship last year. So I'm interested to see how his season starts out.
Coach?
Yeah, it's got to be the start of the Lucas Oil season after what went down at Eldora last year. Bert hit the nail on the head there. And I think, like you said, RTJ, he's going to want to sweep that weekend and set the stage. So it's going to be fun to see.
Yeah, there's a couple guys that weren't there last weekend, right? You got Superman Jonathan Davenport. You got Brandon Overton. They're going to both be in the house. It's going to be fun to watch over there. Hopefully the weather's good. I'm looking forward to North Florida, right? I don't typically see North Florida Speedway down there in the modified. So our pick'ems, 2023 pick'ems, Kraus, brought to you by
Elevate-visual.com. Make sure you hop online, hop on Facebook. You need any video work done, any video production done, get a hold of Brandon. He's got a drone. He does awesome work. Check out his stuff online. He flies over anything. Land, if you're a landowner, housing developments, all that good stuff. Elevate-visual.com.
There you go. So last week's movers and shakers in our pick'ems, Curtis and Bert are only two champions in the pick'ems. Both of you +9, starting out right where you left off. Brad +8, Good Jeff 7, Coach and Changa both at 6. The rest of us all sucked. I had 4 points and Kent had 0. But he did have a hell of a fun vacation. So there is that, right? So he got to have that. The standings right now, Big Bad Brad at 30. Tip of the cap, our buddy Brad there. Curtis at 29. We got Bert at 25. Chonga's at 24. Good Jeff and the 71A, we're both at 22. Coach Kraus at 21. Dan at 16. Kent at 14. We got new Dan here at 9, and Mike is at 7, struggling a little bit. So this week we're going to pick the early thaw. We're going to pick the Lucas Oil late models. Now let's jump into a blast of the past, boys. With soda racing from the 90s. Last week we talked about the 80s. Little shout out, Dirt Track Supply, home of the Aero chassis. They service a ton of racetracks over there in western Minnesota and the South Dakota area. Ron and Trevor, great ambassadors to the sport. They do fabricating. They can get any part you need. Check them out. Watertown, South Dakota's very own Dirt Track Supply. So guys, in the 90s, right? In the 80s, there was late models, there was modifieds. That's it. In the 90s, by 1999, there was 6 divisions of WISSOTA classes to be had. This week, we're only going to talk about 3. We'll talk about the other 3 next week. We'll talk about 3 this week. In 1990, they brought the best division in all of WISSOTA racing. They brought the WISSOTA Super Stocks in, and it became a staple. I mean, that was, in my opinion, the class in WISSOTA. There was 800-900 cars. I mean, that was the biggest class for a long time. And I'm gonna kind of just run through the champions from 90 to 99. I might pause here in a couple. If you guys have anything, just go ahead and jump in. But 1990, late models, Thunder Bay, Ontario, Canada's very own, the Tomcat, Tom Nesbitt, Puka's favorite driver, getting it done from north of the border. Ron Jones continued. I think that was 4 in a row for Jones. And Pete Wallers from Kelly Lake, Minnesota, which is right next to Hibbing, up in my neck of the woods, became the first ever WISSOTA Superstock national champion in 1990. 1991, the late Doug Dinger, the 73 car, Red Will Construction, passed away a number of years back. He got her done in the late models. And then the Dirt Doctor, Lauren Johnson, who's still getting after it, he got it done in the modified division. Bert, kind of got a little bit, I'm a little salty with Lauren Johnson, right? Kraus, you remember they had the pot of gold, Orb's pot of gold, that it came down to me, him, and I think maybe Moss. There was 3 of us left, and he freaking won it. So he got 10 grand, I got $25, but it was still a pretty cool deal. I think he won the 100 that year as well. Wallers went back-to-back in the supers. In the late models in 1992, 00, Mitch Johnson with one of the most, I guess, iconic haulers of all time. When that red hauler pulled in, I mean, you knew that was going to be a force. Ron Jones actually got another one there. And then Pat Dorr, the 1 Express, getting it done in the Superstock division. Spanky's number 11. A number of people drove that car, including Scott Cobes. 1993, Mitch Johnson again, and this started the reign of terror for the Flamin' 8 Ball from out in North Dakota. Kraus, you remember old Leo Burkhardt-Schmeier? He got her done. That was his first of 4 in a row. And then Ron Mader, who took a number of years off back behind the wheel in the supers. All right, Bert, you are a late model guy. I want you to guess the driver that won the late model division in 1994 and 1995.
Pete Parker.
From Colorado.
Oh.
This
Colorado.
driver had a stint in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series for just a little bit, too. David Karst, the old red and white number 33 car. I don't think he made it over to eastern Wisconsin, but he did make it up to Hibbing one time. Burkhardt-Schmeier won a couple more in a row. Mader won 1. And then in 1995, Coach Kraus, you're a super stock guy. The only WISSOTA champion to primarily race on pavement to get it done. In 1995, I-94 and Fergus Falls Stock Center were both pavement, and they had WISSOTA Superstocks. This driver upset everybody and won the WISSOTA Superstock title. I don't know that he even made 1 lap on a dirt track, but he raced on asphalt for 2 years in a row and won the championship. Do you remember the driver's name?
Kevin Duranson.
Kevin Duranson. Do you know much about him?
Well, yeah, because he ran sportsman's cars for a while, and he cut my dad's tire down under yellow one night up in Wheatown. And back then they had the 2.5-minute tire change rule. So me and Shane Rosh were pitting for my dad. We didn't know, they told us you couldn't change the tire. So we ran back to the trailer, grabbed a tire, okay, came back up there, 51 seconds. We got the Wheatown Outlaw Speedway record for fastest tire change, by the way, Bert. It still exists. Just ask Ron Krogh. My dad got a spot back and won the feature. So, and then we let Mr. Kevin Dranson know what went down. But yeah, you're right. It was, so I got to know him a little bit, raced against my dad.
Nice. I didn't know anything about that guy. So 1996, Kurt Gelling getting it done. One of a couple national championships from Aberdeen. Leo got his 4th in a row in the modified. Randy Larson, another guy. I don't know much about Randy Larson. I think he was a Wisconsin guy in the Super Stocks. He got her done in 96. Bert, 1997, 1998. Any guesses on the late model?
That's Pete Parker.
That is Pete Parker. Eastern. So where did they run? I know he ran Shawano, Seymour. What else was Wissota? I think Oshkosh, right? Sunnyview Speed Zone.
I don't think maybe Oshkosh.
I think they did for just a little stint.
I mean, when he won the championships, it was mostly he raced 3 nights in a row. Anigo Friday nights, Shawano Saturday nights, and then Seymour on Sunday nights. And that was when the Eastern Wisconsin tracks rejoined Wissota. And I mean, from what I can remember, I heard people talking that the late model drivers in the western part of Wissota weren't real happy because the Eastern Wisconsin drivers were allowed to their motors were grandfathered in for 1 or 2 years, so they could run big motors.
Cheater. A bunch of cheaters over just like the Packers. Bunch of cheaters.
So but yes, Pete Parker did win the Wissota championship those 2 years.
In the modified, the Brocket Rocket, one of only a handful of drivers to where a father-son duo has won national titles. Brian Strand, a couple in a row in the modified division. 1997, old Dandy Don Eichens, he got her done in 97. And the late John Seitz, of course, one of the biggest events in Wissota, the John Seitz Memorial, but he got it done in the Supers in 97, in 98, excuse me. And in 1999, Kurt Gelling got his 2nd national title. Wisconsin driver, kind of close to your area, Bert, Central Wisconsin, had a stint in a modified as well. Cobra Car, Ford, number 80. Can you remember who that was?
Oh, yeah, Troy Kuyath.
Troy Kuyath. He was fun to watch, hell of a race car driver. And then Brad Sang, and I'll talk a little bit more about Brad Sang in 1999. He got her done in the Supers. So what else do you guys remember from the 90s? I mean, we talked, there's a big list of drivers that stuck out, right? And this is when Eastern Wisconsin, the far west, I mean, national champions from Colorado, right? You had Montana in there, Wyoming, you had the Dakotas, I mean, represented through many states, and Wissota was surging, it was growing, it was strong, and it was getting bigger. What else? Is there any other drivers, things that stick out from the 90s that you guys can think about? I got a few here that are kind of fun.
Well, I mean, for late models, obviously for drivers, I mean, Cedar Lake was a hotbed for late model racing back in the 90s. I mean, on a weekly basis, they would get over 30 late models. I mean, Rick Eggersdorf, Dwayne Mader, Jerry Radetsky, and, all those drivers. And, it was fun watching those drivers race. And, that's when MJ would go race in a Wissota 100 every year for most of the 90s. And I don't remember what year it was, but there were, I think, like 82 late models at the Wissota 100. I mean, for a Wissota show, 82 late models. I mean, it was just amazing. I mean, that was just a good time for late model racing. And then, I mean, as far as modified, you mentioned Kuyath. I mean, Thatcher raced in the 90s, right?
He did.
Thatcher, and
he got red hot in the 2000s, though.
Yeah. And then, I mean, Pat Dorr getting, racing modifieds, and of course the double Q of Tony Barr, he was fun to watch also. And I'm not as familiar with the super stocks, other than I remember they would have like 300 of them every year at the Wissota 100. And I mean, it just seemed like it was just race after race after race of super stocks. I mean, one of them I remember, Spacek, the 22 car. I remember him racing, and I think it was the number 1 car, Giles. You always had big Giles across the car.
Perry Giles.
Okay.
I believe it's his kid or his grandkid is racing now, and Perry unfortunately passed away this past year.
Okay. I remember watching that car race. So, like I said, I'm not as familiar with the super stocks, but they put on good racing too.
Absolutely. So is there any other stories that stick out? Anything that, if you had a story from the 90s, like Burt Lehman's favorite story, is there anything that comes to mind from the 90s?
I don't know if this is necessarily my favorite story, but I mean, one of my favorite things was when Shawano Speedway would have a special and the Western late model drivers would come race at Shawano Speedway. And it seemed like every time that happened, Dwayne Mader just kicked everybody's ass. I mean, Dwayne Mader just dominated Shawano Speedway when he came to visit there for some reason. And, it was just always special when the Western cars would come over and race in Eastern Wisconsin. And that's when the Eastern cars could go race the Punky too, because the rules were all the same. And I mean, I think one year there were like 10 to 13 Eastern Wisconsin late models that went and raced the Punky. And, it was just fun watching East versus West.
Absolutely. So Coach Kraus, any memories? What sticks out to you from the 90s? I know you guys weren't quite with Soda yet, right? But what sticks out from the 90s? And is there any favorite stories other than the one about your dad that maybe sticks out to you?
Yeah, well, like you said, we were NASCAR land. So we were kind of Madison and Viking Speedway were the two NASCAR tracks. And, my one big thing was we talk about the super stocks and the growth of that sport. Joe and John Hinklemaier had a huge part to do with that. And in 1993, the super stocks, we went full-time super stocks at Viking Speedway in 94. But in 93, we merged our sportsmans and our super stocks, and Joe Hinklemaier raced there full-time. And I tell you right now, my dad would have never bought an affordable if Joe Hinklemaier went to race at Viking Speedway. And my dad had his big old Chevelle with a 383 stroker in it, and we'd go flying by Joe in the straightaways, and Joe would go flying by us in the corner. So just watching Joe and John run around the country and, really building that super stock class. And then, 1994, 95, they started supers at Viking Speedway, and then pretty much the rest was history after that. And then, not a lot of people know about Wheatown Outlaw Speedway. I don't know if Bert's ever been there, or Ryan did you ever race at Wheatown?
I didn't.
My dad used to go up there pretty regularly in his sportsman's car, but then you had the modifieds up there, Dave Stork and Ryan Music, and Bob Sagan had a 454 Rat. He called it the Rat in that thing. And if the track had a little grip in it, I mean, he'd lap the field. He had a 454 in that thing, and he would everybody knows who Bob Sagan is building cars and stuff like that. So those are kind of my memories. And then my big memory of the late models was going to Sauk Center. When my dad had his sportsman's car, and watching Steve Feggers and Jerry Leggett, Jim Bruggeman, Jeff Hinklemaier, all those guys racing against each other. Every week they were racing up there. You had Ron Jones and Jamie Lemke and Scott Van Ziesen duking it out in the modifieds. Then you had, your sportsman's car weren't technically Wasota. I don't know if you know, sportsman Dave Kane, he raced against my dad way back in the day in the sportsman's at Sauk Center. So you just like reading all these champions and looking at the names. That's what I like, is just seeing all the names and the history and who's still racing, who's got kids racing, and all that good stuff. So another thing back in the day, Ryan, you had to be 16 to get in the pits. You couldn't go in the pits if you weren't 16 years old. So my one story was we were sneaking in the pits all the time, just get in the pits, and we'd steal my dad's wristband, and me and my buddy Tricky Bitson would tape the wristband on, and we'd walk around acting like we were cool with the wristband. And so those are just kind of the stories there. And then like Bert said, watching the Wasota 100, and I always wanted to see how the Viking Speedway cars did going to race against the Wasota guys, because we were in NASCAR, and how was Scott Van Ziesen doing, and Dave Stork, and a few super guys went over. I never traveled too much, but John Steppen kind of went over there, regularly, and some of our late model guys. So that's just kind of my story of the 90s, is kind of seeing everybody and watching all my local guys race against everybody else.
The 90s was, in my mind, kind of the heyday of racing. I mean, it was kind of like the Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. You didn't have to promote nothing, right? The grandstands were full. There was a ton of cars. I mean, racing was like at an all-time high. Now, keep in mind, we'll talk a little bit more about this next week. This was the last decade before any kind of like video streaming type stuff, right? Netflix and all that. So people were looking for things to do, right? I mean, people didn't have a whole lot of stuff on TV like they do today. A couple things that stick out. Speaking of on TV, Bert, I don't know if you guys got this over in your neck of the woods, but there was a WISSOTA Racetracks show on MSC, a weekly deal. I think it was in 94. For sure it was in 94 and 95. I think it only lasted 2 years, but I think Wally Shaver was the main jammer. Was he affiliated with the Wild, Kraus, for a little bit? Wally Shaver?
He was with the Gophers, I know, for a while. I don't know if he was with the North Stars or if he was with the Wild a little bit, but I know he was with the Gophers for a long time. He's a hockey guy.
I thought he was. And I remember that show. I mean, you'd be jacked up because there was no internet, right? There was internet, but not like today. I mean, you weren't going to jump on Facebook back then to kind of read all about it. Now, if you ran good, you're like, oh man, I wonder if I'm going to be on the show. And I remember one of the old businesses, the Race Shop, was one of the sponsors to that show. But I know Lauren Inman has a few videos on his YouTube channel. If anybody else out there has like all the old videos from those shows, the WISSOTA Racetrack shows, man, I would love for you to upload them, start a YouTube page, and we could go back and rewatch them because they were a lot of fun. 2020 Racing page got its start in the 90s. Bert, were you on the old Delphi Forums?
Yes.
You were? All right.
Yes, I was.
Tagline on there?
It might have been Dirt Racer 14.
Okay. So mine was AHO 71A, right? And I know Steppen was CLS Racer. And I think, what was Mike Stearns? Was he Showtime Boys? Is that what it was? I think he was Showtime Boys. Me and him used to go at it like crazy on there. And then we got to the point, Bert, where there, I know there were several of us that did it. We actually had like 3 or 4 different profiles, and we just starting shit all the time. But I mean, it was kind of fun. You'd get done racing and you'd run home, you'd jump on 2020 to see what they had to say about the event. That was kind of a cool deal. I kind of liked it better than Facebook, to be honest with you. But Troy Power's been doing that for a long time now. Jonathan Power's helping out. 2020 Racing page been around for a long time in one form or another. Lou Fager's Racing Equipment. You want to talk about a dynasty that them guys had, right? So back in the 90s, I mean, obviously people weren't jumping on to Speedway Motors and All-Star and buying all their parts. They were going to their local race shop, right? Well, back in the 90s, guys, you couldn't, like, if you were a local guy, you couldn't be an AFCO dealer. Fager's was the AFCO dealer. You could be a Fager's dealer, but you had to get everything through Fager's. They built a huge business, and they supplied a lot of the small shops throughout the upper Midwest for many years, built race cars. I mean, Mike and Barb, Lou Fager's, the whole Fager's family was heavily involved with racing. And quite honestly, I don't think any of them are involved. I think maybe Marshall, does he still work at QA1 or did he move on from that, Coach?
Yeah, he moved on. He's at that brake company.
Okay. So still involved somehow.
Yeah, he's still involved in racing. I can't remember the name of some brake company.
Okay. So this time of year, right, one of the biggest things, one of the biggest events in all dirt track racing was the big swap meet. They had an annual swap meet at Lou Fager's Racing Equipment in Delano. And I mean, you'd have people from all parts of WISSOTA. They had buildings. You could have booths outside, people in trailers, heaters. Dude, it was so freaking cold you couldn't even feel your fingers, but you were selling shit. But that was a huge, huge event and a big get-together. Now everybody sells everything online and Facebook Marketplace and all these groups and all that, so it's just not the same. So that's a couple things that stuck out to me, some memories I had, and then a couple of favorite stories. So Leo Burkhardt-Schneider, they got a rule after him, couple in fact. So back and there was a lot of controversy between him, Ron Jones, and some of the guys that were racing for points because he was out in the Dakotas. Car counts were significantly less. So that's when the show points started to when they had, if you had X amount of cars, you got more points. That started because of him. Coach Kraus, do you remember the other rule that came into place because of the Flamin' 8-Ball?
I don't, other than the tranny rule that was going on around then, but I don't know what you're talking about.
The 14-day rule. So the 14-day rule was this. in order to host a WISSOTA scheduled event for points, you had to schedule that event after this rule is put in place 14 days minimum in advance. Well, the reason for that is because if he had a bad weekend, got a flat, rained out, needed some points, he'd get a hold of a promoter. They'd randomly be like, hey, Tuesday, we're going to have a show over here at rugby. You know, once you guys come on down, they'd get like freaking 4 cars. He'd win. He'd get full points. He'd win a national championship. That happened. So they had to actually put a 14-day rule in place so that way you couldn't just randomly schedule a show. And then, of course, COVID kind of changed that because there was no points and people are like, well, shit, we got to kind of run some races. So a couple Leo Burkhardt-Schmeier rules. Brad Sang. So my first interaction with Brad Sang, 1999 at the River City Speedway in Grand Forks, North Dakota. So they had, that was my first getting to know about the no-fault rule because it's a sprint car track, right? I literally started like 12th, got the lead, got spun out, got put to the back. I'm like, I was pissed. I'm like, what the hell they call that on me? I come from dead last, right, up to the front on my way through. I get spun out. I get put to the back again. I'm like, you've got to be shitting me, right? I literally come from last. I get the lead, right? And Brad Sang cuts my left rear tire and spins me out in front of the whole pack. He goes on, gets his spot back, wins the feature. The place is booing him like crazy, right? And he come through the pits, and I threw my tire at him, and I had a big crew with me, and he probably would have whooped the shit out of me, but I was freaking pissed off. He comes walking down, and he goes, hey. I'm like, what do you mean, hey? He goes, I apologize. That wasn't the right way. He probably didn't know the rule. I'm like, what rule? He goes, well, we got a no-fault deal here. If I spin you out and you stop, you go to the back. I knew that. I took advantage of it, and that's how he got a win. And he felt bad, so he bought me a tire, and he paid for our hotel rooms to be able to stay. So he was polite, but, man, I'm like, what a dickhead. Oh, was I pissed. I get along good with Brad now. 1996 Labor Day shootout. That was my first big event, so kind of the mid-'90s. I'll never forget. Kraus, have you ever had one of those moments where you're in the car, you're not even leading yet, and you just kind of know, like, it's over. I'm going to win. This is like, you kind of just have that feeling like it's over. Have you ever had that feeling?
Oh, yeah. You get that, especially when you get on, get confidence going, you win a few in a row or you're at your home track. It's like, let's go. Here we go.
Yeah, I had that. I'll never forget. We used to remember the cars used to stop on the front straightaway. Yellow would come out, cars would stop. I remember looking up in turn number 1, and my pit or sponsor, Al Radica, Rad Choir and Supply, sponsored me all my years of racing. He's up there in the grandstands giving me thumbs up. I was in second at the time, and I just went like this to him, and I'm like, I just knew, and I ended up getting by Dale Gangle to win my first Labor Day shootout. Probably my favorite 90s story, and I think it was from 90, 91, one of those 2 years. You guys remember Randy Silverness Jr.? He was a 2X. He ran supers, good in a late model. He ran a bunch of different classes. Hell of a good race car driver. So remember they used to have the work area in the infield at the Cedar Lake Speedway for the features? So like everybody would bring their tires and all that stuff down. Well, he come down out of the pits, come down, stopped. They took the tires off, but he took off, right? They thought they meant to go. He took off. The generator was still on the back of his car. He comes into 3 and 4, gasses on it. The generator bounces off the wall, right? And his generator is all smashed to shit. He goes on to win the feature, but I don't think it covered maybe the cost of the generator there. So I just got a kick out of that. So the 90s were great. Fans below, right? Share some of your favorite stories. What stuck out to you from the 90s? It's fun looking back. Racing today is so much different than it was back then. But what sticks out to you from the 90s? Guys, the last lap. This one kind of close to your area. I think he's from, I know he's from Alex. Former Dakota Rumble winner. Hanging up the steering wheel, going farming. Coach Kraus, what do you got?
What you got to rephrase that question. I wasn't listening.
Former Dakota Rumble winner, hanging up the steering wheel, going farming.
Former, oh boy, Bryce Sword.
Bryce Sword. Yeah, he had a big post on Facebook yesterday or the day before that he's done racing, going to follow his dream of farming, and sounds like he is done racing. So one of them young guns out there that was kind of looking promising. Good luck on your future endeavors there, but hopefully we have you back behind the wheel. Kind of fun to watch. Bert, EPJ.
Yeah, he's got a ride for the Lucas season this year. Came together at the last minute after he made a phone call to Jason Ron. And what I read was they had a lot of work to do in a short amount of time to put this deal together. So we'll see how he does this year. I know that I had that one of my bold predictions was that he would be rideless this year. So I was wrong on that. And I'm glad to be wrong.
Right.
He's a good driver, good person. I've interviewed him several times, and he's always willing to take time for an interview. So it's good to see him back in the car.
Good to have the Hurricane back. Wissota news. Kraus, you hearing anything over there in central Wisconsin on the Wissota front? We're still waiting to hear from Princeton. Sounds like Cliff's contract is up the end of January, and I think they're going to have some kind of announcement the first week of February as far as what their classes are. We're all anticipating switching over to Wissota. Have not heard anything yet. Kraus, anything else?
No, nothing too crazy. Most schedules are out. Hopefully going to get the Viking Speedway schedule out here. Just hopefully added the UMSS High Roller Series that they put together. I think that's going to be coming to Viking Speedway. So I was waiting on that, and I got a couple of minor things. So I'll get that schedule out. And then most of the schedules are kind of coming out. They're still kind of rolling out. And I still think it's kind of early. I kind of like waiting, kind of let people get a little anxiety and then get people really excited when that schedule comes out.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I mean, it's only January right now. So, and plus, once a few of them come out, you can kind of work around some of their schedules instead of trying to fight with everybody to figure out what you're going to do.
Well, nowadays, if you don't have your schedule out by mid-December, everybody's going crazy.
That's okay. That's kind of fun, too. High limit sprint car going fan friendly here. So, guys, they did the Durst dice roll last year where drivers could kind of slide back and get a bonus. I don't know if you saw this or not, but fans, if you have not, go to the High Limit Sprint Car Series. That's Kyle Larson and Brad Sweet's series that they put on. But they're doing a deal where a fan, right? If you bought a pre-sale ticket to get in the event, they're going to draw out a fan. You're going to roll the dice. If the driver that, let's say you rolled 8, if the driver that starts 8, that's who you're matched up with, and you and that driver are going to split some money. So kind of a cool deal. They're getting the fans involved with the program, the High Limit Sprint Car Series. Guys, I want your thoughts on this. 2023 Red Theater Speedway schedule came out today. They're going to run, they're making up the features for the 2023 Dwayne Mader Memorial Race. That's going to be the last week of April, that last Friday in April, pretty much before most Wissota tracks are even racing. Few drivers upset about it because maybe they're switching classes, doesn't work out. Should they have just split the purse, called it a day? B, if drivers don't show up there, should they get start money? Should they get compensated? Let's say a guy, I know there's drivers out there that maybe switch classes, so they're not even going to be able to race the feature because they don't even have a car. How should they handle that? Your thoughts?
Well, it's not unprecedented to race a scheduled event a scheduled event one year and race it the following year. But usually when that happens, that's when the entire event is canceled. No heat races are run or anything like that. But for this, heat races were run. So, normally they just split the purse, and I tend to think that that's probably the way they should have gone. But they're going this way. And I think if a driver doesn't have a car anymore or isn't racing or switch divisions, I think they should get their entry fee back or they should at least get their entry fee back so they're not out that money.
Coach Kraus, you agree?
Yeah, I agree with Bert there. Especially if you're not there, you don't have the car, make sure you take care of those people that did come to support it, that they can't be there anymore. Make sure you take care of them and, try to keep as many possible things happy. It is what it is. I mean, they're in an impossible situation there, so they're trying to do what's best. But make sure you take care of the people that were there last year.
Yeah, and I know Bulldog puts up all the money for that. He goes out and primarily gets all the sponsors. So they looked at him and they said, "What do you want to do?" He's the one who put the work into it. He decided, "Hey, let's run this race." The money's going to the racers. Instead of just splitting it up, the fans not getting a show, they're still going to get a show out of it. But hopefully they do something to compensate those that can't show up. So Mike actually sent something over, our buddy Mike, cardboard sled derby. So if you're looking for something to do here in the coming weeks, Saturday, February 10th, head over to Frederick, Wisconsin to the Barrel House. Go on Facebook. You can find all the rules, but I guess they're building cardboard late models and modifieds and all kinds of different stuff. And so it's kind of a winter fun type event. So check that out. Pretty cool deal they're putting on. And speaking of Mike, because he kind of picked this guy to win one of the nights at Golden Isles, the smooth operator, Bobby Pierce. Bert, did you know he's not going to race any Lucas shows in between the bookends of Volusia?
I did not know that.
He is going to New Zealand, and on his schedule, he has a couple races in New Zealand this weekend and the following weekend. So he's going to go down under to go race something down there.
Jason Fager's going down there also to race.
Oh, he is? Okay.
Yeah.
I know one of them is streamed. You have to kind of look online. Go to their websites, right, and look at the schedule, pick out the tracks, and then you can maybe find where these races are streamed, but it'll be interesting to see. So let's jump into our last segment here, boys. 3 bold predictions. First, we're going to have the accountability session. We'll talk about what we got right, what we got wrong. We make 3 laps around the track, racing predictions every week. So off the board, Bert, you said there ain't going to be a full-time ride for Earl Pearson Jr. in 2024. You alluded to that. You were incorrect. That's good to hear. You said Smokey Chris Madden would have a pair of podiums, and one of them would be a win at Volusia. That did not happen. He struggled. He actually struggled. But you did say the smooth operator, Bobby Pierce, would go winless at Volusia. I wasn't really sure when he started outside pole that first night, but he went straight backwards. So Bert jinxed him, so that's a yes. And then you said that Tom Berry Jr. would have a pair of podiums down at the early thaw in Casa Grande. Night number 1, 22nd, drove off the end of the track, but then he got a first and a second. So, Bert, you were correct there. Coach Kraus, you had 3 come off the board. You said, and I'll just mix these all together. You said Huddy, Travis Sauer, Ricky Weiss would each win 2 of 3. Incorrect, incorrect, and incorrect. Travis Sauer did find speed by the end of the week. He struggled early, and he progressively got better. Coach Kraus, could he be a factor this coming weekend down there?
Yeah, I think he's going to be. I was chatting with those guys, so I know they had some issue, just mechanical issues right away that set him behind the 8 ball there. So, like I said, he showed some speed and he can pass. He's gonna cowboy up, you know that. So I think he's gonna, and he doesn't like losing. I don't care what he's in. He'll be a force to be reckoned with this weekend.
I agree. So the peanut gallery here, we got good old Kenny. Kenny said Brandon Shepard would win at least 1. Boy, I thought maybe he was gonna 16th to 2nd. He was close, but no cigar. And he said at least 1 new winner at the early thaw. At the very least, Tom Berry Jr. and TPO were both first-time winners at the early thaw, so he got that one correct. And then Dan, Mr. Negative Dan, not your Dan, our Dan, the other Dan, he said 2 out of 3 at Volusia would end after midnight. I got to be honest, I was pretty impressed. They got things done in a lot more timely fashion than I anticipated. So he was wrong there. And then I had a couple come off the board as well. I said between Hudson O'Neill, Tom Berry Jr., Tyler Peterson, and Jory Berg, they would all have at least 1 win this weekend. Jory Berg let me down. He did not. He did get a podium. He got a 3rd, a 6th, and a 7th, but I got sniped by 1. I said all 6 late model feature wins would be from former Wissota national champions. Billy Moyer, come on, guy. I'm a Billy Moyer guy, but he messed that up for me, right? And then Blake Adams would have at least 1 podium. He had 2. He had a pair of seconds. So I got that one correct. Our current standings here. So I'm at 40% with 2 on the board. Bert, you have 6 on the board right now, correct, but 8 wrong. So you're at 43%. You got a slight nod. Coach Kraus, you got 2 correct right now. You're at 40%. Good Jeff, he's batting 50-50, 2 predictions, 1 right, 1 wrong. And then the Peanut Gallery, they're at 33%. So leading the way right now, Good Jeff. Good Jeff at 50% there. That is not G-E-O-F-F, that's J-E-F-F from the Upper Peninsula. Guys, they had 50 inches of snow in like 6 days there. 50 inches. You got to be like mentally unstable to live there. We know he is. That fits right in. Okay, so this week's predictions, guys. I'll make 3 laps around. I got predictions here from Good Jeff and from Kenny, myself, Bert, and Coach Kraus. Bert, you go ahead. What's your first one?
Golden Isle. RTJ will be on the podium for every race and get at every feature and get at least 1 feature win.
Okay. So all 3 nights, every night they race, he's on the podium and at least 1 win on the weekend. Okay, for RTJ. Coach Kraus. You're muted.
She's probably going to mute that. Hey, we're going down to early thaw. The limited class is going to get swept by the same driver all 3 nights.
Are you going to put a name to that driver, or are you just going to say? Okay.
Nope. No names.
All right. So all whatever they race this weekend, all feature wins in the limited mod, same guy. Okay. So Kenny here, he said the Nightmare Lucas Rodin will win. He will win at least one of those 3 in the limited mods. Good Jeff said all feature races at Golden Isles are going to be won by either RTJ or Superman Jonathan Davenport. So between those 2, those will be the only feature winners at Golden Isles. I'm going to go down to the early thaw as well. Young gun Blake Adams is going to win at least 1 of the 3 this weekend down in Casa Grande. Coach, I guess we'll go back to Bert first. We ain't going to skip you. Bert, what do you got?
I'll go with the early thaw and say in the modified division, the feature winners will be the same as they were last weekend.
In the modified features? Same order, or just the drivers that won last weekend?
Same drivers will win.
Same drivers.
Not necessarily in any order.
That was Chaz Baca and Tom Berry Jr. will be the winners in the modified division this weekend. Okay. Coach Kraus.
We're heading back down to early thaw. We're going to go late models this time. Same winner all 3 nights in the late model class.
Same winner all 3 nights in the late models. All right. Kenny said at least 1 repeat winner at Golden Isle. So they got 3 events down there this weekend, and 1 driver is going to win at least 2 of the 3. Good Jeff said Superman Jonathan Davenport's going to be the Lucas Oil Dirt Late Model Series point leader as they leave Golden Isles. So Superman going to start out. He ain't even hit the track yet, so it's kind of a pretty bold one right there. Winless Weiss wins at least 2 in the desert. He was good last week, had rough starts to the night, but was super strong on the back end of it. Ricky Weiss going to win at least 2 in Casa Grande. Bert.
All right, I'm going to make some people upset in our pick'ems, but and Jeff, we'll see if this is bold enough for you. Superman will not only not get a feature win at Golden Isle, he will not get a podium finish at Golden Isle.
I feel like you're firing some shots at Mike. Is this about Mike? You picking on Mike? All right.
No, I'm not picking on Mike.
No podiums for Superman. Okay. All right. Coach Kraus?
I'll give you that one, Bert. That's pretty bold. I'll give that one to you. Not going to be as bold as this one, though, Bert. Longhorns getting skunked this weekend, Ryan and Bert. Longhorns getting skunked at Golden Isles this weekend.
I like it. I like it. That kind of goes along with my Hudson O'Neill pick in the pick'em. All right. So Kenny's third and final lap around the track. Between the World of Outlaw Late Model Series and the Lucas Oil, all their races combined, there's going to be a minimum of 10 different feature winners in 2024 between World of Outlaws and Lucas Oil. So far, we're at 2. All right. Good, Jeff. Bobby Pierce is going to win at least one A main while on his trip to New Zealand. I got no idea what they're racing, what class, but he's going to win at least one down there in New Zealand. And then my third and final pick. Kind of sniped me there. I had a similar pick, a little bit different, but I'm going to go with the Nightmare Lucas Rodin. Dominated in the limited mods. He's going to have at least one podium finish, though, in the IMCA A mod down in the desert. So he's going to turn that around. He kind of running okay, but he's got to step it up to get into the top 3. So not only is he going to run strong in the limited mod, Lucas Rodin going to be on the podium at least one night in the IMCA Modifieds in the desert. So there it is, gentlemen. Episode number 209 in the book. Any closing thoughts before we jump off here?
No, just racing season is starting to kick off in full effect now.
It sure is. All right, guys. Well, thanks for jumping on. And I guess we only got football on Sunday, so football no longer competing with dirt track racing. So we got Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Got some great racing going on. Check that out online. Fans, below here, right? Punch those buttons. Let us know your favorite stories from the 90s. Let us know what you're looking forward to racing this weekend. Let me know if you have any predictions. If you ever have any bold predictions that you want to share, hit any one of us up. We can get you on the bold prediction side of things for the fans. And with that said, as always, I'm Ryan Aho. That's Bert Lehman. That's Coach Kraus. Thanks for tuning in to the One to Go Show.